My name is Mohammed Syam. I'm a developer and architect working for American.com, who's a Sitecore Platinum partner based in Chicago. We have Sitecore talented people in London, Bulgaria, UAE, and Jordan. So in today's session, we will go through a migration journey to Sitecore Content Hub PCM. Basically, and let me see if I can control it. So basically, over the next 30 minutes, I'm going to give you a quick overview of what is Content Hub PCM. We will talk about what you need to prepare before you start migration of products into PCM, the migration process itself in details, the product metadata, the product images, and how you can link these two together. Also, we're going to talk about internal integration features that we can utilize to integrate with other systems, as examples, Sitecore Commerce. So basically, we will start with the introduction. I have the sandbox, so I may share my other screen, show you Content Hub PCM, and also we will go through the preparation phase, what you need to ask yourself, what you need to prepare before you start your actual migration. Then the migration itself, how you can migrate your assets, how you can migrate the products metadata, link them together through internal scripts, and finally, just an example of how you can integrate this with an external system. So let's dive into it. So first of all, Sitecore PCM or Sitecore Content Hub PCM, it stands for Product Content Management. It's a management system used to create, organize, categorize, and publish all product-related information. With Sitecore PCM, you can stay in control of your product content. Among other things, you can integrate existing product data with your new marketing content. To create a single source of truth, you can streamline the content process in a single platform, supporting multiple brand, complex product ranges, lifecycle, and of course, localization. You can view how and where your product assets are used across commerce sites, catalogs, mobile apps, point of sale, and more. There is tight or out-of-the-box integration between Sitecore Content Hub PCM and Sitecore Content Hub DAM, Digital Asset Management. One of the main functions or main features we have in PCM is catalog. Basically, a catalog is a PCM function by which you ensure products is well organized and structured. Sitecore PCM enables organization to define commerce catalog to structure the product, creating high-level taxonomy that let you classify and categorize products and manage versions. So if you're not familiar with the taxonomy in Content Hub, we will talk about it in the coming slides. But basically, catalogs can be created through catalog taxonomy. Also, other than that, Sitecore Content Hub PCM will provide you with categories taxonomy as well. You can define the categories that you like so that you can categorize your products. Also, Sitecore PCM builds around the product module. So in the core or in the heart of the PCM, we have a schema called embedded PCM, the product. And also, there are relation with other areas, other schemas within Content Hub that we're going to talk about in the next slide. The Sitecore Content Hub PCM is included in the Sitecore Digital Asset Management license. So once you get the DAM, you also get PCM with it. As I said, there is an integration between PCM and DAM, and the metadata is shared between these two modules. So PCM metadata is shared to DAM so that you can see the related product metadata from within the Sitecore Content Hub DAM. In this slide, as you can see in the middle, and let me just this guy. So here in the middle of the screen, you can see in the PCM the product Embedded PCM, the product is basically the schema for the product. If you're not familiar with schema within Content Hub, it's basically, you can think of it as a template in Sitecore. So the main template or the main schema we have for PCM called Embedded PCM, the product which holds the metadata for the product. And as you can see, we have a parent and child relationships with other Sitecore Content Hub entities. As example, we have a many-to-many relationship with input asset, which is the main schema for Sitecore DAM. We have other relations. As example, we have a many-to-many relationship with catalogs. So as I mentioned, you can create catalogs as another relation, as another schema of taxonomy, and you can link products to their matching or related catalogs. There are other relations. As example, if you have CMP, you can also, CMP is another Content Hub module. It also has a many-to-many relation to input content. There are like other relations as well, product family, state and state machine if you have workflows, user and user groups for permissions. So all these are relations, and as you can see, in the PCM, the product is the core, it's the heart of the PCM. That's a quick overview of PCM. It's a simple module with a lot of functionalities that you can use. In the preparation phase, like assuming that you have your products, let's say in the legacy system, and you want to migrate these products into Content Hub, what are the main questions that you need to ask yourself? Like, how do you prepare yourself to do the migration process? First of all, you need to make sure that in the PCM schema that we talked about, actually it's something you can use. Does it have all the metadata, all the fields that you need? That's the first question. Then you need to ask yourself about the multilingual support. Like, do we have a multilingual support for product metadata? How I can switch between languages? How I can manage assets, assuming that you need, let's say, a multilingual assets for your product. How are you going to manage that? In our case, we were building, as example, the system for an international company where they have like a headquarters and then they have local offices or branches all around the world. So imagine how you need to build your localization for the products metadata, for the images. As example, for the same product, you have different images based on country. Like local offices sometimes need to have like different images. So how you can accomplish that within Content Hub? So first of all, let's start with the schema. So you can probably think of two approaches, like how you can extend or add the support for your metadata. Imagine, if you're not familiar, imagine how you do extend a template in Sitecore. You probably think of creating your own template. In Content Hub, creating your own schema, add your own section fields and fields, right? Another approach you think of like extending the existing embedded PCM product by adding new section fields and new fields. So the recommended way here is always to extend the existing one, because everything in PCM is built around this schema. So even like future releases or future or coming features are going to be built around this schema. So just go ahead and extend it, like use it, add your section fields, add your fields into the same schema. Then another thing you need to think of, some of your metadata, some of your fields going to be like drop downs or multi-list. So you need to be able to map that through the migration process. So you need to go ahead into Content Hub and make sure these are created already. So you need to create for any field that is multi-list or a drop-down, you need to go ahead and create a taxonomy list or an option list. The difference between these, basically, like there are like a matrix, or let's call it a chart, that will tell you should you use a taxonomy or option list. As example, If you have a large amount of data, you should go with a taxonomy. If you are going to drive security based on an option value, as example, if the selected value is this, then let's give as example read or write purchase. So if you need to derive security based on taxonomy, based on an option value, then go with the taxonomy. There are like 5 or 6 questions you ask yourself, so you can choose between these. But the idea here in the migration is to make sure you get these in advance before you reach out to the migration phase. Also, the localization. The localization is something important. Like in Content Hub PCM, if you're working for a multilingual company and you're doing a multilingual implementation, you need to make sure that the schema you're extending, the fields you're using support multilingual, they are not shared. I can show you how. Also, we need to think of an approach how we can localize assets, because the input file or the input asset, it's not multilingual. You have some of the fields like the alternative text or the description text is multilingual, but the image itself, it's shared, like the binary itself is shared. So how you can accomplish that? So let's start with updating schema. I have a screenshot here. As you can see from the left side, I have a screenshot of an out-of-the-box input PCM product. As you can see here, we have 7, 8 section fields with some simple properties for metadata that we already have. And on the right section, you see how an extended input PCM product looks like. You can see how many section fields you can define, how many fields you can define. So that's the first step you need to do. You need to make sure that you have the right structure or the right schema. Then go to the next step, like defining good taxonomies. So taxonomies, as we said, like subset of metadata. You can think of it as a drop-down, but with hierarchy. So you can have a parent-child relationship. You can drive security based on it. You need to make sure that you have this prepared in Content Hub. There is a nice feature that we have in Content Hub, which is basically you can import this stuff through an Excel sheet into your Content Hub instance. So you don't have to define it manually. Like you don't have to go inside Content Hub and add it yourself. You can just build your taxonomy in an Excel sheet. So as example, this is how an Excel sheet looks like. As you can see here, we have an identifier. Think of an identifier as an ID. We have a taxonomy name. We have a taxonomy label. So if you think of a multilingual implementation, and there is a field that is multilingual, as example, the taxonomy label, what you can do is add the hash sign, then the language code, and then you can add like different columns or multiple columns here. So if you have French language as example, you add another column similar to this one, and you just change the language code, change the value, and you will have your multilingual label. It's all automatic, so when you import it, it's going to be imported for you. As I said, like in taxonomies, you can build a multi-level or hierarchy. So it's also supported. So all what you need to do is to make sure you set the parent relation. The order, of course, is important. So you import the parent and then the child. Another thing that is important, the worksheet name here basically must match that taxonomy. So you go to Content Hub, create taxonomy, then you use this Excel sheet to import all the values you need into that taxonomy. It's very important. It's very nice feature to have, like in case you have like a lot of taxonomies, a lot of values, so you can go ahead and just create them using the import functionality we have. Same thing applies for an option list. An option list is like similar to taxonomy, but much simpler. It doesn't have all the complexities that we have with taxonomy. Still, we can build it manual, or like we can import all the values using an Excel sheet, same format, same structure, list fields. One more thing, like for the option list, like it has specifically name identifier label, so you don't have any other fields. In the taxonomy, you can extend that, you can add more fields into it, so that you can contain or hold like more information. That's your preparation phase. Once you have all of that, then you can start think of, okay, a multilingual support. Like when you create your schema, always make sure to look into this field. So when you create, as example, a string field, there is a checkbox called multilingual. It's similar to, if you remember, or if you are familiar with the shared checkbox in Sitecore content editor. So basically, this is something similar. The only difference here is this is something you can't change after you create the field. So you need to make sure, like when you define your data member, when you define your field, to make sure to remember if you want this to be a shared or not. If you accidentally create it and you want to change it to something else later, you have two choices: either delete the field and create it again, or if you have like a large amount of fields that you already created, you can utilize the export-import functionality. So similar to how you create packages in Sitecore, you can actually like export package from Content Hub and import package in Content Hub. So you can export the package, you can open it. It's basically a JSON file. You open the JSON file, you go to this field, find it, and then you can update it to whatever you want. The second thing you need to think of when you work with multilingual is the ability to switch between languages. Like you go to the manage section, you define the languages that you need, but then as example for me, I think I was using 4.0, and for some reason there was no multilingual drop down to switch. This is, by the way, the product detail page. So this is the detail product. This is the detail page of the product. And I expected to have like, okay, there should be like language selected here, but it wasn't there. So in this case, you have to build it yourself. Luckily, I was working with Sitecore support, so they helped me a lot with this. So basically, you can go to the manage section in Content Hub. I will show you how. Go to pages, go to the exact page that you want. Then you can utilize something called HTML component. I think I have a screenshot here. Yeah, exactly. So the product detail page that we have seen in the previous slide, this guy, you can just go to the backend, to the manage section, to the admin section, and you can actually like see the design of the page. You can see the different placeholders. You can see the different components. This is a title component. This is entity operations. It's like the buttons or the operations that you want to add. Here you can add something called HTML component. And then in the HTML component, you can access the details. It's not like very straightforward way of adding the language selector, but basically you can add HTML component, save the page. Then you can access the properties of this HTML component using this URL, and then you can update it to have a language selector. So basically, you just add a control like this, and then you will start seeing the language selector based on the languages used in the backend. As you can see here now, I have all the languages that I want, and I can switch between them. This is I don't want to call it a hacky approach or a workaround, but this is what I ended up doing on my version. But then I believe in future versions, I believe 4.1, it's coming out of the box. Just something you can think of. If you didn't find it, there is a workaround to add it. The other thing you need to think of is like how you can work around like multilingual assets, like multilingual images. So imagine that you have a product, and in that product, it's linked to multiple assets, right? You may have like 1, 2, 3, 4 assets or images. So there is a relation as we talked between the PCM and the DAM. So basically, it's a field. It's a field with a relation type on the product where you can link assets or link images to the product. So as example, in this diagram, I have a product linked to asset 1. Ignore the country code here. Asset 2, asset 3. But then on the asset itself, we have product details, or you can tag the asset with specific catalog. So what I did is, okay, let's link the product to all product images that are related, but then we can tag the image with the country that is being using. So as example, for asset 1, as example, if this is only used for UK, then let's tag it with that catalog. So in that case, we will end up having a multilingual asset. So we can say that, okay, this product has these 3 images, but if as an example, in the front end, when you're building your site, your front end website, you can only display images that are tagged with catalog UK. This is how I achieved it in our implementation, but if anyone can think of any other approach, I would be very eager to hear about it. Now the migration process itself. So in the migration process itself, it has 3 phases: migration of images, migration of the product metadata, like the product items themselves, and then connect these 2 together. So you can do this in one step. You can import that. You can import the product images, then you can import the product metadata, like the product items, and then you can write a script to link them together. So let's see how we do that. So importing the assets. Again, Sitecore Content Hub offers an import functionality using Excel sheet. So for your assets or for your product images, as you can see here from the screenshot, this is an Excel sheet screenshot. The first column here is basically like the URL for the image. The second one here, as example, PCM catalog to asset. This is the identifier of the catalog. So as example, I wanna tag this image with catalog UK as example. So I can do that. Product name. I'm gonna tell you what is this going to be used for. So this my product name is unique per product. So there are no 2 products has the same name. So I'm using this column to be my, let's call it foreign key, so that I can know how I can link these assets to their related products later using the script. The final life cycle, Sitecore or Sitecore Content Hub DAM has its own workflow. I think it's 2 or 3 stages. So I don't want all these products to go through the workflow. I want them to be approved by default. So this is what I'm doing here. Batch ID. My input. I think my initial input had 4K assets or 4K images for that 4,000 images. So I didn't want to import them at once. So what I did here is to group them into batches of 200. So I input 200 at a time, so that if something goes wrong, I can just write a script to delete all product images with batch ID equal to, as example. That's a nice thing, or a nice technique you can follow instead of migrating the 4,000 at once and then something goes wrong and you don't know what images have been imported, what issues you run into. So importing them 200 at a time would be a good technique. Again, the description, all the alternative text you can see here, it's multilingual. All you need to do is to add that hash sign and language code, and you can define 1, 2, 3 columns of depends on the number of languages that we have. Once you do that, you just go to Content Hub on the create page, and I can show you the create page in a minute, and then you just input the Excel sheet. You just select the Excel sheet, then the background jobs will start working on these, and It's fast, I would say. So for 200 images, I think it's going to take about 15 minutes to import all these, process them, making sure that you have all the metadata for the images, because there are like some background processing in the downside. That's what you need to do for the images. For the products metadata, the process is very much similar. Again, you can utilize, so you can go to the create component in your Content Hub. You can enable Excel import, and then you can prepare your Excel. Again, all what you need to do is to define your schema. This is something it must match what you have in Content Hub. You remember when we extend the input PCM schema into PCM product, we added our own section fields and fields. So this structure in the Excel sheet is something you need to match. So an easy way to get the structure or the columns names here is to create a product manual in Content Hub, then export it to Excel, and then you can use that Excel as your template. Here, as you can see, I have product name, I have industry standard code, product label. Again, I have multilingual implementation, so I need to make sure I import all languages. And same thing, you go to products and you just attach the file and the import will work. It's going to be like very fast for you. Same thing, you can do the batching thing, the batching approach, so that you can control like your input. The last thing is to link these two together. I wrote a script, and I'm not sure if you guys are familiar with Content Hub scripts, but I can show you. Let me grab my browser here. So I have this in GitHub. So if you go to GitHub to my account, to my guests, you can see like a lot of useful resources there. But as example, this is a script, and I can show you where you can add this in Content Hub. But basically, here as example, I have a query that will query all assets that I have. I'm taking 100 at a time for performance, and then going through these one by one. I'm using the Content Hub iterator, and basically the idea is to get the asset. There is a field called product name, if you remember. Get the product name, find the matching product, and then just do the relation between them. It's open source, so you can check it out if you want. And if you have like a better way of doing it, just let me know. Eager to hear other opinions. I have here the Content Hub. I think, I'm not sure if do we have time to just go through it really quick? All right. So basically here, this is a Content Hub instance. As example, the whole PCM module is around this area here. This is the products. As you can see here, we have comments, catalogs, and this is an out-of-the-box sandbox. So the content here is just like sample content from Sitecore. You can see that you can define your catalogs easily. And then here as well, we have the products. And you can see how the facets can be also defined. This is all configurable, by the way. You can add facets based on custom fields as well. So if you extend the input PCM, the product, and you added some multi-list or multi-value fields, you can use them as facets, and you can extend the facets on the left here. This is the functionalities that I was talking about. Like when you click add in here, you can add single product. So you will get a form where you can fill it and add your product, but also you can import Excel. And once you do that, you just select your Excel file from here, hit it, and that would be your way of adding your products. Another thing, we talked about how you can import your assets, like your product images. If you go to Content Hub into the create section, Same thing, you can go with the add button. This is called the create, I believe the create component. It's something you can configure, you can enable, disable these options. So if you don't have the import Excel here, you can just go into the backend and enable it. So in here you can, I'm not sure if you're familiar, but you can upload files, you can select 1 or 2 files in here, but also you can do import Excel. And in the import Excel, you just upload the Excel sheet that we talked about in the presentation, upload it, and then the processing jobs or background jobs will start working to import all these URLs, all these images into Sitecore. If you don't have that column that talk about that set the status to approve, it's going to be created here, but then you have to go through them and move them to the review and then move them to that asset. So basically all images will be added here, then move to the review tab, then move to the asset tab. I'm seeing all of them because I'm an admin. The script that we talked about, you see the gear icon here on the top right. If you click it, you will go to the admin section where you have a lot of features, a lot of functionalities. One of them is called scripts. So if you filter on script, script is basically like a C# script that you can run within the context of Content Hub. You can add a script here, and then you can create your own script. So if I'm going with this thing here, it's an action script. There are like different types of scripts, but let's go with an action script. Action script, it means it's going to be triggered by an action. This is all part of something called internal integration. With the internal integration, you have something called actions, you have something called triggers, and you have scripts. So I think I created it. Let's see, where is it? So you have a script editor as well here. So you type your script inside Content Hub. Let's wait for it to load. Yeah, exactly. So I can click edit here. I can come into this one as example. Copy it, go to the script editor, adding it in here. I can save it, I can build it. I can do a lot of things here, and then when we come to the trigger part, you can do it from Postman using an API call. You can define a trigger to do it. And while we're talking about trigger, so that will lead me to the last piece in here, which is like, if you like to integrate this or integrate Content Hub with another system, there is something called internal integration within Content Hub. It consists of 3 things: a trigger, an action, and scripts if you would like. So here as an example, this is a screenshot of a trigger. Basically, a trigger is like a listener. So you can say, as an example, in this part, if you go to the conditions section, you can say, if m.pcm.product has been updated, then I want this action to be triggered. You can add conditions, as example, if you want to listen to specific fields. So as example, if the product name has been updated, if the, as example, product images have been updated. So you can listen to any of these, let's call it actions, and then trigger something else. If I go back in here, so you can ignore this one, I don't need it. But if you look into section E called trigger, and you go to the trigger section, you can see how these can be added. So you can add a new trigger. And in here, you can say in the conditions, you can add definition. So as example, I'm interested with m.pcm.product. So this is only listening for this definition or this schema. Then I want to add like conditions. So as example, if the name has changed, then if this is true, then we go to the second section here, which is actions. And in the actions, I can call that script that we define as example, or I can call something external like age or service bus. And we already have an example in the Sitecore about like integration of Content Hub PCM with Sitecore Commerce. So we talked about like a trigger. There is an action as well. So let me show you that as well. So here in this tab, like we can add an action. So let me show you where you can find actions and define actions and what type of actions we have. Content Hub is a little bit like has too many features, too many functions. It's small, not very big, but it's like it has like a lot of things. So here as example, we have actions. So you can define a new action. In the new action, you have action script as example if you want to select the script that we define. But if you want to, as example, have Azure Service Bus. So we can send messages to Azure Service Bus. You can define your connection string, what topic name or queue you want to send the message to, and even you can define custom values that need to be sent. And then whenever that trigger listen to that action, it's going to trigger the action that goes to Azure Service Bus, and then a message will be sent to Service Bus. And then if you have a custom code, like in another part that will have like a listener to that Azure Service Bus, you listen to that message and then you execute whatever you need. This is how currently we have a connector between, and this is just an example of integration, which is between Content Hub and Sitecore Commerce. I know we don't have a lot of fans for Sitecore Commerce, but the same idea can go with any other system. So here on the left, we have the Content Hub that we talked about. We have the products, everything important to Content Hub. Then you need to integrate with other systems, assuming it's Sitecore Commerce. You can create your Azure resource. You can create your Azure Service Bus, and using the internal integration that we talked about, like defining triggers, defining actions, defining scripts, you can send messages to Azure Service Bus. In your commerce engine, as example, in Sitecore Commerce, you know, if you're familiar with Sitecore Commerce, you can create your own plugins, and then you can create a custom plugin, add your Service Bus listeners code that will listen to these messages. As example, this product has been updated. Okay, let's sync it from Content Hub into Sitecore Commerce, creating our commerce entity. This is basically like a simple integration utilizing what we have in Content Hub, Service Bus, and the commerce plugin. That's pretty much what I have for today. Hopefully, you guys liked it. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. If you don't have the time now, feel free to reach out to me at any of these channels. Send me an email or a message, and I will reply to you whenever I can. Thank you so much for listening.